What is up, everyone? Today we are going to talk about the NFL two-game slate this weekend from a DraftKings DFS perspective, and you'll see we have the second guest of the channel, DFS PHD, a longtime friend of the channel. Thank you for coming on here today. Any opening thoughts on the slate before we get a deeper dive into it?
Cheers, thanks. And I'll just say the thing, you're good enough, you're strong enough, and gosh darn it, someone's got to win that money. It was a fun NBA slate today, but it's no specific screenshots, unfortunately. But that's this will be a fun slate. I think it's all about weird running backs and weird tight ends. So that's my overall sense of the slate. But yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess we can start with QB. Obviously the big four. All these guys are elite QBs. For me, I think that Hurts is one of my favorite targets this week, just with the rushing upside. And then I would have to lean Josh Allen second, again, because of the tremendous rushing upside. But then again, Mahomes has, some level of rushing upside as well. And Daniels obviously has a ton of it. So I don't think there's really like a ton of edge in, which QB you choose this week. But Allen and Hurts are my priorities for sure.
Yeah, agreed. I got no leans on the quarterbacks. They're all very good quarterbacks. Obviously, they're like not necessarily the top four quarterbacks, but they're good. I mean, you probably get low ownership on Daniels just based on price point, is my guess. If that's true, I like that, but I like him as a player. I feel like of the guys this weekend, he's the least known quantity though, so maybe that you get those like popularity boosts to Mahomes and Hurts and Allen just because they got fans, they got guys with the jerseys and stuff. And I don't know if Daniels has that effect quite as much yet.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that one thing I've noticed throughout the short slates this year is that the QBs who are big underdogs, for example, plus 200 or higher, I feel like they always just get so much lower ownership relative to the rest of the slate. And yeah, when you have a guy like Daniels who has a biggest ceiling as anyone, and if we can get him at low ownership this week, I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, people kind of lean into that more implied team total and what that means for teams rather than the game script that implies. So I don't know. That's kind of one easy way to get different is to just, you can boost Washington 6 points and then let that filter down through your game sims. I haven't done that. I think you can do that a little more granularly for, you got two games. They're both rotations that you want to think through every single snap for. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess with that, we can move on to running back. I'll start it off here. I mean, obviously Barkley's going to be like 80+% owned. He's the best play on the slate. The way that you could fade Barkley, I think is Jalen Hurts is going to be vulturing rushing touchdowns. Like I think that's the way that Barkley doesn't get there. So if you're going to have lineups without Barkley, it's probably smart to have Hurts in those lineups, I would say. But besides that, I do like the idea of getting a little bit weird with like maybe a Ty Johnson or maybe even a Perrine play all the way down here. Again, 2 games. I mean, this might be more showdown relevant for Perrine, but I think that, you can make moves like that on a 2-game slate. Ray Davis, I probably won't get to a lot of him in the 2-gamer, but definitely showdown relevant. Gainwell, not my favorite option. And then as far as the KC running back situation goes, it's just once again with Hunt and Pacheco, and then Perrine getting some of that passing work in the back. It's hard to guess. I mean, Hunt has been the lead back even with Pacheco back in the rotation, so I lean towards him. But once again, if you can get Pacheco at extremely low ownership and you have some indication that he'll be getting a ton more work, which I don't have that indication, then I think he's maybe in play. But and then as far as the Washington goes, I think Eckler is the preferred side just for the pass catching upside in a game script where they could be behind.
Yep, and you get like the 3-1 ownership for the game script expectation there for between Robinson and Eckler, so I'm just going to match that and move on. They're 50-50. Easy fork there, if you know my lingo. The max one of the two guys gets there, easy. Be done with it. The same thing with the KC backfield, I think. I mean, I look at the ownerships and I see way different than the snap counts, right? Like everybody wants, Hunt did well last week or has been the lead back, so presumably people will condense around him or Pacheco because of past playoffs. But you're right. P. Ryan's getting a lot of that work. And if it's going to be like 14, 15 to 1 ownership, and he's cheaper, and he gets like the passing work even with, Hunt out there, even with Pacheco out there. He's the, plurality of the targets are going to P. Ryan. So if it comes to game script where they're playing from behind, which is like 50, it's like a lot of percent. Some of that percent is going to be P. Ryan getting 10 checkdowns out of the backfield or some stupid outcome. And that's way more than 1%, like whatever his ownership is right now. So I love the P. Ryan play that you mentioned. And similarly, in that backfield for like James Cook way up there at the top. I mean, I play the Madden Sims all the time. In the Madden Sims, he's a great bell cow back. In real life, he's not the bell cow back for this team anymore. I'm not even sure he gets the plurality of the snaps for this team. So I can't do Cook at a high ownership on this slate generally. I mean, I'm sure I'll have a smattering, but I'm gonna have it as a fork between him and Ty Johnson, who is actually out there and is their pass catching back. So just on the exact flip side of the game, okay, what if one of these two teams has to be from behind, and whichever one is behind is going to have a low-owned pass-catching option that you should play. So it's fun. I like this kind of setup for a slate. I don't really think, besides that, you play a bunch of Saquon, but don't even say plug in 80% of Saquon. Just pop a random number generator if it's less than 0.8. Pop a Saquon in there. If not, then pop no Saquon. I like your idea. I did write down the Hurts Barkley fork. Haven't had that in there all year. Probably should build that in. Of course, this is going to be the week where they score like 8 combined rushing touchdowns or whatever. But generally, they vulture each other pretty consistently.
Do you think that the same argument could be made for Cook and Allen this week, or is that maybe going a little bit too deep into it?
Well, I got Cook and Ty Johnson in a rule because of snaps. But yeah, could I put Cook and Johnson? Yeah, I mean, just practically speaking, yes, he has vultured a ton of his rushing touchdowns. So for sure, that makes sense to me as well. If I'm popping these in here, then one of them could be an Allen. So the reason that I'm hesitating is also more so, I think, than Barkley. Aren't we seeing more like receptions out of Cook from this backfield? I mean, Ty Johnson's getting receptions too, but his are like actual receiver routes out of the backfield, or like they move him to the slot or something. Whereas, I don't know, I feel like you get actual checkdowns to Cook still, whereas the other one is Barkley checkdowns, and I just feel like that's just not that common. They got Goddard probably as their preferred checkdown option to Barkley. I mean, they'll sometimes do it, but it's just he doesn't look that. I wonder who has what kind of receiving stats do we have for Barkley for the 4 targets, 2 targets, just not that much. Smattering. There's not getting that much work in the receiving game. So yeah, it's fine to make that's where I would worry about doing this is if you have a guy who's getting a ton of receiving work. Yeah, not that much, huh? Thought I remembered him getting more than 3 targets. Yeah, okay. So I think both of those work pretty well. Like, if you get one of these 6-target games and he falls into the end zone, you get the weird correlation game, maybe. And I mean, I'm more open to the idea that I'm instituting too many rules, generally speaking, in terms of the final outcome. But also, I only get to build 5,000 lineups, so I want to make sure my face space is populated with primarily lineups that I think have a possibility of winning. Granted, that possibility very tiny. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about salary restriction on this slate in the general sense yet. But yeah, it's a 2-gamer, so obviously do some amount of salary restriction, probably about half as much as on a showdown slate, general thing.
And then is Ray Davis the guy you would go to on the 2-gamer, or is this more of like a showdown relevant type of play?
I don't know. He only got like 10% of snaps or 15% of snaps last week. It was not getting squeezed out more than I wanted. I didn't see it coming last week, but now that it happens, I gotta. Well, he didn't leave injured, right? I thought he was just not used very much.
Yeah, listed as active for Sunday, or that was last week. Oops. I'm not sure if he left injured.
He sustained, so he was hurt in the wild card round, so he was coming back.
Okay.
It's from a concussion. I mean, you can project it. Yeah, he's not out of play for sure. You just heard me going nuts for Ty Johnson, so I'm not going to say no, can't do any Ray Davis at the exact same. I assume at the same ownership discount that I'm getting Ty Johnson. I don't know at all. I haven't looked in there, whatever, 2 days ahead of time projections, but right. Yeah, they're definitely both. I mean, don't look at obviously the most salient feature that you'd be like, oh, I don't want to do running backs against this killer Kansas City defense. Don't do that. That's not how this works. It's a 2-game slate. You got to sample the best running defense gets completely smashed outcome. That's a huge percent of the outcomes will be that outcome. So
right.
Yeah. And everybody's looking at it, right? That's the other aspect here. It's extremely salient to the random dude clicking lineups. Random dude clicking who's never thought about this before in his life is going to go, first, bad, whatever that I do for various other sports. So, okay. So yeah, I'll stop yammering generically about the running backs.
So back to wide receiver.
Yeah, so I do not have very many takes here on wide receiver. We know these rooms pretty well at this point. There was one rumor that what's his name, D-Hop, they're going to use him more in the playoffs or something. Didn't seem to be that way. So, you could go back to that well if you want to. But probably you want to play a lot of good receivers and don't mess around. I mean, below what, Keon Coleman, or do we have other guys down here that you can go to? That's about as probably low as I go. I mean, you could. Crowder is getting snaps still, maybe. I don't think any of these guys is going to be in there below. And even Coleman's, yeah, probably that's about the fringe for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, so I actually do like Hopkins a little bit this week. And then for what it's worth, I think that there are some low priced options here that are in play. Curtis Samuel is a guy that I'm considering getting to, as well as who else? Dotson. I'm like is a very fringy play. It's more of a showdown look, but I wouldn't be opposed to it on a two gamer. And then as far as the priced up options, McLaurin, like everyone else this week, I'm sure he's my favorite option. And I prefer Smith over Brown. And I actually prefer probably Goddard over both of them, but we'll leave that to the tight end discussion. And then I mean, Cooper, just not a lot of interest there. Zacchaeus was seeing a lot of work, and then now he's kind of been phased back out. So, and I guess the guy that's been replacing him is De'Ami Brown. So happy to go back to him. He's been doing extremely well this playoffs. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me on receiver.
Yep, good point about De'Ami and Zacchaeus. Probably don't play Zacchaeus even at the price falling, and De'Ami still remains a pretty good value even as his price rises.
Are you going to take any shots on like the Jujus or Justin Watsons of the world or no?
No, but the reason is because of all the weird tight ends I'm going to be taking, because I'm taking tight ends that are below 3K. So that's my typical strategy for general classics. I always have a below 3K tight end in the mix, no matter the size of the slate. But particularly for these ones where, like, pretty much every week one of these weird tight ends is catching a touchdown. So, and it's important. You see why? Like, this is crunch time. This is end of the playbook time. This is tight end 3 catches the ball time. So it's I don't have any tight end 3s I'm going to plug for this classic slate, but they are probably in play somewhere on this showdown slate somewhere. Jody Fortson or whatever. I don't know who is tight end 3 now. But.
Well, with that being said, I'll let you tell us why Dawson Knox is the best tight end on the slate.
Ah, yes. Well, you mean the tight end 1 for Buffalo, who I don't understand. Like, I looked it up. I don't look it up. I should do my replay a little sooner after, but I'm deciding to give myself some grace. And when something happens like that costs you $1,000, you don't have to dwell in that in the moment. You can get some reflection to next week. So I was like, okay, was Dawson Knox, was he the tight end 1 or not? Yes, he's still the tight end 1. He didn't pay off last week, but he 56% of the snaps. He's running a ton of, or I don't know about the routes, but he's getting target. I mean, 2 targets wasn't great, but one of those targets was in the red zone. It was a long one. It was very frustrating that he did not catch it. I mean, it wasn't on target. It was one of those that was like a hopeful little, duck, and it was hot. It was snowing and stuff. So it was hard for him to catch it, but he's running incredible routes in good positions. And I mean, did Dalton Kincaid look right to you guys? I don't know. He still doesn't look right to me. So for me, it's an unclick for Kincaid, and I'm sure he still had more targets or whatever, but I think they're going to get Knox. Yeah, Knox is definitely in play, and he's not under 3K, but the other guy around there is great. Like, I can't say for sure in any game whether you're going to get more targets for Noah Gray than you do for Travis Kelce, and that's weird. That's different than before seasons, and like he's taken on a much greater role, and it's like a crunch time thing. It's like for whatever reason he's become 3rd down and Gray, or like 4th down and touchdown. Like, we got to have it. Let's give Noah Gray the ball. It's been a weird, right? Doesn't he have like a number of touchdowns? 5 touchdowns this season. What an absurd thing for Noah Gray to have. I
think a lot of those were multi TD games too, right? Let me look.
Yeah, let's double check, because I know that's only 20 weeks. Yeah, you're right. Like, so the chance you got a Noah Gray optimal game, even in a classic, is not low. And the chance of him being, he's not going to be on, because nobody knows who Noah Gray is, and nobody scrolls down to 3K. And even among sharks, like, he's a kind of fringe play. So, he'll be 5% owned probably, and that's fair. And I'll probably take 25% shots, because 3 games out of 15 close games they played this year, he smashed. And so that's about 20%. Yeah. So that's where you need him. That's where I'll have him in the captain spot, probably for some dumb reason in the showdown. But yeah, the same exact plays apply. I'm going to literally download, projections and put them upload into, not for ownerships, but for the projection part into the showdowns, and go from there. And so, spoiler alert, it's the exact same values. You got roughly the same salary distributions and whatever. So any additional tight ends beyond this scope, because I think most of the other teams keep it pretty tight, and/or like Calcaterra just never really showed us anything. And and Goddard he's like much better. So it's just obviously going to target that guy more to me. And Ertz is like, oh, Bates. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wanted to see if I was remembering correctly that he does get some end zone targets. Like, I feel like I always see him getting like a 2-yard passing target in the red zone. So
that's the thing. Yeah. You do, and the only other problem with them is they do have Sinnott around, where like there was some buzz with him. So you got like 3 guys who could all technically be the guy in the end zone, and like Bates is just such a blocky guy that I don't. he's getting some, and this is long. Okay, 13. I'll admit some of these routes are longer than I was aware that he was running. I assume that is also true for the defensive backs who let him go 20 yards or whatever before going like, who's that guy? All right, gotta guard him. But that could happen this game for sure. I do think though he's a little limited in terms of you're never seeing really those 2 target games, right? Like he's assuming he's still 1K or whatever on Showdown. That's where you get a Bates option. Might be a little much for Classic. I mean, a 2-gamer, fine. Have a dabble if you're doing 150, but can't be too excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a Showdown play. Just because, yeah, if he catches one in Showdown, he's in the optimal at, I think, what is he on Showdown? What, 1K you said?
Or that's something? My guess, just because he's not really, I mean, he probably, 1K, that's not the full minimum, right? So I was just ballparking him to be like kind of where they have those twos and threes. I haven't really looked at that.
Yeah, for me on tight end, I mean, honestly, like I was completely forgetting about Noah Gray before you just brought him up. Like I was thinking through the Kelsey, the Goddard, Ertz. I was even going down to Knox, but like I forgot he was even here. So yeah, I'll definitely be playing him. After remembering, I mean, just all the multi-touchdown games he's had, and the increased role he's had this year, I'm definitely going to be taking shots on that at 3K. And then obviously Dawson Knox, like you said, getting the same, if not more, snap count than Dalton Kincaid these past few weeks. So I'll be on him at $1,000 savings and a lot less ownership. I think Ertz is probably the guy I'm going to be lowest on this week. He does get a lot of work. I'm not going to X him out by any means, but I'd rather get to like Dallas Goedert and even, these lower priced Noah Grays, like you were saying. So that's kind of where I stand on tight end.
Yeah, I do wonder how it'll shake out with the 2, what goes in flex. I guess that's the next spot to talk about. But because you're right, like the value options will probably squeeze out the amount of elite tight ends that I would put in this spot. But then I will have some of the elite tight ends available in flex. And to get really weird, I might make the weird value plays available in flex. So like, because nobody ever is going to have double value tight ends or some weird thing like that, right? So like Knox and whatever other guy we were just talking about, who's still I don't care about as an actual player. No, great. So you can play those 2 guys together and then have just. I don't think you need that salary, right? There's just not those guys this week where you could jam the McLaurin and Barkley, and you don't need to jam Cook, right? So it doesn't quite work out this week to do that weird play with the flex spot. But that's my general lean for what to do with the flex spot. Probably just jam Saquon and whatever. Probably not Cook based on my previous leans, but McLaurin, your Kelsey going to get a zillion targets, even if he doesn't fall into the end zone. One of these running backs for Washington would be allowed. Maybe one of the running backs for any running back that's in the rule for Kansas City probably could pop. That's about probably where I'd draw the line. What about yourself? Any other?
I would say I'm definitely not opposed to doing double tight end, especially on a 2-game slate. The one thing that I think could potentially be viable that no one will do is triple running back. Like, do you see any world where that gets there, or is that a little bit too off the board?
Oh, no, that's definitely fun. I mean, I imagine my ratio will probably keep that, 20% wide receiver, the highest tight end, about 20% too. So probably 60, 20, 20 with the wide receivers just because the highest various position. So like, I assume that my pop-off lineups, I mean, when I'm doing the ones that are behind, all of those should pivot to wide receivers, right? So 50% of my lineups will wind up wide receiver. And then, but the ones that are ahead, I do think a fair amount will wind up running back. So probably 25, 30% by the end of swaps. Because it's just like, what's the second game? What's the order of games?
It's I think it's Philly. Philly goes first. We can look right here.
Okay.
It is, Philly Commanders first.
Interesting. So you have to make your decision about the biggest chalk of the day early. And then so all of my, so the chalk in the second game is like tight end. So whether or not I wind up with Kelsey. Okay. So maybe I won't need as many in the flex spot because my decision about Kelsey versus Gray or another guy is mostly made by whether that lineup's ahead, right? So I don't need to worry that much about whatever game script or other thing. It's going to be just a decision. Okay, yeah. So Kelsey's one of those decision points. Who else? Who's going to be the chalk from that game? Buffalo.
Let's see.
I don't want to jam Cook. That's the thing. It's kind of all weird chalk in this game, if there is chalk. Shakir. Okay, so Shakir would be one play that like I'm on him in all the lineups where I am ahead, and I'm probably getting weirder with one of their other receivers in a lineup where I'm behind. Let's see. Yeah, actually, where's Coop?
Oh wow, he's 4K. All the way down at 4.1K.
Huh. Yeah, that's pretty low. But also, he wasn't. doing much. And he was really not out there to the point where, yeah, my second guy was probably Keon, right? Or is that right?
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, I mean, I still have Coop in the pool, but he's as the wide receiver 3 projection, I think, currently. So it was weird. It was really weird how little they used it. Like, why did you pay this guy, right? Like, this is the time for now. You paid him for now. And he's not hurt. I didn't understand it, but can't project for
Yeah,
more.
he's had a major fall off for sure.
And I don't know like his metrics. Maybe maybe he's not creating separation or whatever. But I thought he's just not throwing the ball. This is my sense of the thing. He's still the same guy. But just put him out there. I don't know. Keon Coleman is really outperforming him. Could be. I'm an old man though. Let's give the old man a shot. That's my old man take.
Yep, and then another guy we didn't really talk about, Hollywood Brown. Any special thoughts on him, or is just another Chiefs receiver that's in play?
Yeah, all the wide receivers, like, just flip a coin, take a magic dice out or whatever, roll the dice. You got 21 of these guys that are all like fine. They're all receivers that have made this round of the playoffs. They're good. They're good enough to do that. It's not has no bearing on what happens tomorrow. It could be some weird stuff and that's all of the fringe guys for tomorrow. It's Sunday, whatever. They're all Madden players, so it's hard for me to disassociate Curtis Samuel's performance in Madden or Dotson's performance in even past seasons of Madden catching bombs. I hope he does that in the game. I don't know if that's his role in this offense or whatever. It's not as, but yeah. So I'm trying not to get excited on players based on their Madden attributes. And as a result, yeah, I don't know what to do with any of these fringe wide receivers. They're all just they're all there for me. I guess, yeah, that whole Keon versus Amari thing, but I don't think that's a weird lean. That everybody saw that happen last week. And I guess, yeah, I don't know about any coach speak situations. There would have been a ton of press conferences after last week. So if there's something in those about one of these situations, maybe, but I didn't really dig into any press conferences after the last game. I don't know if there's anything. I should check that out.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. But he's definitely. It's been weird to see him take a much smaller role in this offense after that huge trade earlier in the season. So, yeah, not exactly sure what's going on there, but from what I know, I can't imagine anything will change drastically. Like, sure, you can catch a touchdown, but there's nothing that's leading me to think that he won't perform like he has been.
Right. Oh, yes, defenses. We've got to talk defenses, which probably means also remembering to talk about the weather, which is Kansas City and Philadelphia, which I have not. Have you looked it up? I haven't looked up the weather at all.
I haven't checked weather reports yet. My kind of mentality with defenses on these slates is I don't really care all that much unless we're getting like the Ravens as 12-point favorites. Then obviously they will look good. But on this slate, I think all the teams, as far as defense goes, look similar, and I could see any given one of them getting there on the day, whether it comes down to just point per dollar price. If you get 9 points out of a cheap defense like the Commanders, that could be enough on this slate. Whoever has the pick six will probably be enough.
There you go.
I have no real take as of right now.
No correlations. That's the most important thing. There's a 2-gamer, like you say. Whichever team gets the pick six wins, and that's completely random shot noise. So that's how you got to do it. Like have a little bit of each team, and do not worry if you have because you've seen the situation, right? So the quarterback for Washington versus the Eagles defense. Well, what happens if he throws 2 pick six? Well, he's gonna have to score a lot of touchdowns now, right? Like that's the only way they ever come back in the game. So that thing, it seems anti-correlated, and during a regular season, maybe it is. But in these, winner-take-all games, it's not as and it's not as strongly anti-correlated as some things are. You know what I mean? So a quarterback versus opposing defense, or a running back versus opposing defense, or a number of players against an opposing defense, that's like 10% outcome still for optimal. You know what I mean? Like it's anti-correlated minus 15% or something, but it's still got a 10% residue there. You know what I mean? So those are the places to focus this week where you have that, slightly unmined percentage that people round to zero, but it's definitely not zero correlation. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point, especially in a game where you're trying to beat a field of thousands of entries, and other people aren't going to do that, or very few people are going to anti-correlate defense with quarterbacks or other players or whatever it might be. And it's just, it obviously happens. We've seen it happen plenty of times where the optimal is an outlier outcome. And as far as like you said, there's no way I can predict like who the pick six guy is. Like there's no QB on this slate where I'm like they're always sloppy in these big games. Like we said, all these QBs are very good. So your guess is as good as mine when it comes to that. But I'm definitely going to turn off defense against opposing QB and just let the sims or whatever optimizer you're using do whatever it does. Or if you're hand building, same thing. I think you can build in that way.
It's a good point. I need to make sure there's not an automatic rule about that.
So any other thoughts, or is
general
that it?
broad points? Yeah, probably not. I mean, I guess salary wise, I said about half as much as Showdown, so I'll probably cap it about 500. Maybe for swaps, I'm not, since swaps should take into account how well a lineup is doing, but they wouldn't. I don't know if they take into account dupes well enough for me to leave the cap off for swaps. That's what I'm debating here in my 10 pretext clauses. But so yeah, I think probably 500 max.
500 seems right.
And then maybe like I'm debating 1,000 to 1,500 for like the lower end, like, because I don't want to give too much wiggle room. I want to make sure I'm still saturating. So yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably like try it with 500 and then see if that makes 5,000 lineups. And if it doesn't saturate the zone, I'll make it 1,000 or whatever. So whatever gives me a fully saturated little phase space.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of on the same boat, like 500. And then when you get to late swaps, it's kind of just use your own judgment. If a lineup is doing really well, and whatever situation calls for it, you can leave more at the time. But pre-lock, I think 500 is probably the most I'd be willing to give up.
Yeah. And I never know where to weigh like how much like my pre-lock constraint really mattered, because by the end it's all about what I did on my swap constraint. So like the initial lineups, the combinations of guys I chose, was there any restriction? I don't know. Probably not, because there's going to be a number of guys who are in the later games anyway. So it's probably just a constraint on the final games. So who knows?
Yep. All right. Well, that'll do it. Thank you guys for watching as always. Thank you, PhD, for coming on the channel. And good luck to everyone this Sunday. Cheers.